closer. I think I've seen your heart before, and I know that you know. I can tell. He says, girl, don't let your mind work overtime. No need to reason with love. No matter anyway, we have arrived, and there's an undeniable sign. This is an undeniable time to live. You're unforgettable, credible. It's just inevitable.
Beginning the conversation, but it's almost as if there's a need right now, you know, and it just seems like in this year 2019, it sounds so surreal to even say
it
that
does.
Sometimes, because it seems like we would be really advanced as a society, and yet it seems like some of the stories, like, you know, homelessness and all these different ways that people are being oppressed, and, you know, just war, and these stories that have been repeating for thousands of years, like, for a long time. Here we are, and it seems like it still feels overwhelming. Like, how are we humans going to solve this? Are we humans supposed to solve this? And is there a connection to a coincidence of maybe more people are seeking experiences, or there's an outside influence helping the experiences happen so that we can solve this? Because if we're stuck in this story of this is how it is, this is the third dimension, if we don't even entertain what other dimensions are really about, what, you know, if we don't even entertain that, then we are kind of stuck in this one way of dealing with things. And I know you've spoken about transcending from where you're at, rather than, you know, fighting to create this revolution, but transcending from where you're at, and working with maybe energy beings from other dimensions to gain perspective, to transcend out of this moment. There's so much involved right now, ultimately, to get to the question of how do we now raise the human consciousness? How do we help the situation right now? If for people who feel overwhelmed, and for people who feel depressed, like, when is this going to end? You know, what can I do? This keeps happening over and over, you know, and I might as well just keep on going, trying to survive, trying to pay my bills.
Right.
And to me, that's the old paradigm of the paying the bills part, just to survive. And the bigger paradigm is the unity consciousness. And I think the experiences are about awakening us to that.
Yes. Great question. Yeah. That was wonderful, and I'm excited to respond to that. In last week, when I did my talk, I had a couple of different slides about this, and I kind of want to bring those back in, because the reason why we're looping and why things just, it's like, how are we ever going to get out of this, is because we're using this much of our available consciousness on the spectrum of what is possible. We live in a patriarchal world. We live in a world where only the left brain is valued. We have suppressed soul, we have suppressed our emotional nature, we have suppressed the divine feminine. Talking about Kundalini and Koyopa a moment ago, that's the goddess energy at the base of the spine. It's been dormant. And that's the rest of our consciousness. So to pretend like we can solve problems without the divine feminine is laughable. It's never going to happen. And then the brain and the mind is also thinking, it's a paradox. How do you linearly get from this, I got to pay the bills, I got to go to work, I got to, you know, and I got to be a good person, and I have to follow and make mom happy, dad happy, my husband, wife. all of these requirements in order to be happy people. I have to have enough money in the bank. It's ridiculous. We can't keep doing this. What needs to happen is that feeling memory of not only the divine feminine, but the marriage of that feminine with the masculine part of our mind. It's not about saying, screw the patriarchy and screw all that stuff. It's that all needs to come back into balance with the divine feminine, with soul, with our emotional nature. We've been taught through media, through cultural conditioning, whatever, everything. We've been taught that feelings are bad or scary or just, quit, be weak. There you go. And in saying that, you're also saying that love is weak, and love is not weak. And this is there's so much powerful conditioning here, twisted. Everything's backwards. When you start to wake up, you start to see that everything is opposite of what I've been told. What I learned through my experiences is that our emotional nature is our superpower. That's what connects us to creation. That's what we use to commune with these other beings, these light beings, these ETs, angels, what have you. That's how we can connect with them. It's a heart language. It's a heart consciousness. But we're taught the opposite. So we suppress that. We're embarrassed to have feelings. I mean, people are even, there's a stigma, there's taboos about just going to a therapist to talk about your feelings. I still can't believe it when I hear people say, oh no, I would never go to a therapist. Wow. But that's where our power is. Mm-hmm. And that's what I learned and discovered. And I talked to a lot of other experiencers as well as people who just know these things through their own spiritual practice and understanding. That this is something that we've been directed away from. We have been pointed away from this power, the balanced masculine and feminine power. Once that's all back together again, which is what I refer to as our natural state, plain and simple, then the paradox goes away. The conundrums go away. Mm-hmm. The conundrums and the paradox are only there because we're only using this much of our consciousness. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. To me, that makes perfect sense. After having the experiences and the bioenergetic event and how it changed my consciousness, I could see all of this very clearly. And then trying to translate it to other people who are still using just this, mm-hmm. or still just valuing the left brain perspective and devaluing the feminine and soul right brain mm-hmm. perspective. It's very hard to communicate these kinds of understandings to people who only see and will only receive what science tells them or what religion tells them. We need to have the courage to open up to our Creator directly and be informed directly of what is true. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the experience of being able to do that is universal, regardless of your religious or scientific beliefs, and everything in the middle can be connected, or everything can be kind of met in the middle in different ways, just by realizing we've both had some kind of experience. We may use different words to express what that is. I think it's interesting that in this time we're using a lot of words with quantum physics is giving us a lot of new vocabulary and ways to observe energy and how it's behaving. And thousands of years in different ancient texts, the Mayas were talking about the energies. In the Vedic traditions, they were talking about the prana. And in China, talking about the chi. And yet we're observing it. And so it's an interesting time to see how maybe that might bring people together.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between studying it in a book and watching a YouTube video about it. It's all very interesting and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But the direct, actual experience needs to occur.
And it's so simple, it seems like. We can have simpleness, but not necessarily easy. But we can start now. We can start
simple.
with breathing.
It's simple. It's just us that gets distracted. Like what I learned and what continues to come now in the messages that I bring through from this present moment state is make your intention. Are you serious about this? Do you want to connect to your Creator? Are you ready to do that? And then what happens in the consciousness? It's like, or it might be, yes, I am, and I commit. And this is what I was guided through in 1998 before the awakening, the bioenergetic awakening, was, okay, show up every day, same time, same place. I did it. I was committed. Because it was either that or what I explained at the talk last Saturday, I was going to commit suicide because of the severe depression that I was in. And I'd already gotten past, through what I explained last week, I got past that moment of I'm going to kill myself. And it changed, it shifted into me letting it all out. But then it came to the place of listening to that still small voice within, really. To, okay, are you ready to proceed? Will you make this commitment with me? Will you walk with me to Source? Are you willing to feel your Source directly in your body? Because we're designed for it. And that's what we've forgotten, or we've been told otherwise. That we're sinners, that we're, pieces of shit, basically. I mean, that's kind of, we're conditioned to believe that we're so much less than what we actually are. And as an experiencer, we get to find out on a feeling level who we actually are. But see, feelings are devalued in this reality. So it's the experiencer that has to re-educate people. And that is already happening. People
just sharing their experiences with no shame, even though it may be not easy to share, but just really allowing it. People may share too. Like hearing your story makes me feel comfortable about talking about my experiences.
Yes, gives you permission to do that.
And when I was thinking, man, people will think I'm crazy, and then it went into, it probably wasn't real. From my experiences with, I've heard the term cosmic family. Just it comes through dreams for me. And in that sense, I think sometimes it's just my mind's way of being able to process it. That's where I feel like I'm at now. But I've had so many interesting experiences since I was very young, which sent me on my quote-unquote spiritual journey at a young age, because my mom told me, if you're afraid of that, mystery thing happening, I would have terrible nightmares, or I would see things and I would ask for help. And she was just saying, just pray, and I would sleep with my Bible. And there was something about the experience of trusting that there was a energy or a God that loved me, that it triggered love within me. And I started to feel the protection. And so it grew into this awareness that there is something that works there.
There is, absolutely.
And it became an experience consistently and a practice, even though I didn't have the discipline to go through rituals or focused time frames. And that brings up my next question of just...
But there was the intent there, and there was the practice of it and the consistency. So that's what I mean about the commitment, is you just shared a level of commitment with me that you had, and you felt it. Once you feel it again, and it's not about the relationship of the words on the page. That can reflect this, and where Jesus said or God said in the Bible, you can explore that from the experiential view. Now it's like, oh well, that supports this. Or other people, other experiencers, that validates this that I already know. And so what you just described is being an experiencer. It isn't such a rigid definition. It's you experience that love. You experience that direct connection. Yeah.
I think that's what triggers a lot of people, or maybe separates people from, well, I can't do that. You know, I don't have the discipline, or I don't have that practice, or I don't want to practice that way. I don't want to sit down with a tree, or I don't want to sit and breathe. I mean,
Right.
maybe, and then they get into why it won't ever happen for them, even though it could still be happening. And I just think that it's interesting how it still can happen. That phenomenon, an experience, can happen to anyone.
Yes.
And ultimately, it just gets back down to, how are you going to tell the story? And it's the way we all tell stories of how what's happening that sets us apart. You know.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, it's just really prevalent that the differences divide us. And we're getting so caught up in differences. But ultimately, it's a universal experience that we tune into a guidance, an awareness, whether we believe in a God or not. We can know a concept of, this is just feels, be good for goodness sake. Be
It's love.
a feeling of good, a feeling of love. And there's a lightness about it. There's a good vibration about it. And then there's a darker or a heaviness or a different vibration that doesn't feel as good. We can feel that sensation regardless of how we're going to connect it to a religion or a spiritual practice.
Yes.
And I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, that's the common denominator.
Yes.
That feeling, and that we all know this is true. This is true. Regardless of what my pages from my religious book reads compared to yours, this is what's the most important thing to tune into, to remember. Those books were written by other people who had other of their own experiences. And that's, again, great validation sometimes, great resonance, but this first, then this, and then we build this new reality from that foundation of being reconnected to our source and truly reconnected with each other. So, yes, I mean, I'm not Catholic, but I was drawn to the saints after I'd had these experiences because I identified with them. So I wasn't like, oh, Catholicism, that's not my religion. It's, oh, look, I understand what Saint Teresa of Avila was saying there. And St. Francis of Assisi, I understand, I grok what they're saying because I saw it too and I felt it too. So it isn't that we just say forget all that or judge it, it's that this becomes primary and that becomes secondary.
And by knowing this, it helps us tune into everything. In a sense.
Yes.
By knowing our truth, we can feel truth beyond us. We can see it. You've spoken about how you can know when somebody's lying, or you can read it
instantaneously. Yeah, because you're back in attunement with your Creator, with the truth, with love. You're back in balance with the masculine and the feminine. You're actively releasing fear and trauma, willing to let it go. All that weighs us down, or all that just translates to fear, which is a lower vibration. So, and all that, if with that intention to move and grow with and awaken with our Creator, we just automatically attract the situations and the people, the synchronicities that show up in the outer world, because we're living from inside to out, rather than outside to in, being dictated to by our outer world. Instead, we're being not dictated to, but we're in alignment with the universal. And bringing through our universal identity. And what this presence has said through some of these messages I brought through is, then we get to practice being that. We get to play with that. We get to, whoa, we have more whole consciousness now. What does that look like in relationship? And how do we build new systems that are healthy and in harmony with our being in the earth, and it's just automatic. It isn't an argument anymore. You see it, you know it, you understand it. And then people who still who haven't come back together again with their natural state and the truth of who they are, they may still try, to lie. But most people will be able to see right through it because they have the balance of their consciousness again. And it isn't, an angry thing. It's just, oh, that's interesting that you have that perspective. Good day. I don't prefer that. Mm-hmm. It's more about preference. I don't prefer what you're saying, so I'm going to go and align with what I prefer. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be a nasty argument. It doesn't have to be war. It doesn't have to be any of that. It's just, eventually they get outnumbered. The more people that awaken to what they have within them that guides them.
Says you needn't worry about a thing. There's nothing to lose. You choose love.